welcome to another edition of the Sports Junkies Sports Talk Show. I'm Thomas Bookwalter, your host, and this time we got a bigger show for you this time because not only do we have a lot to talk about, we got more people in the studio. Of course, we're joined by Ben Baker as usual. Ben, good to see you again. And we have a new guy today, Ben's friend John. John, welcome to the Junkies.
Thanks, Thomas.
And the former voice of God from last time, he had to call in last time, and now he's live in studio. David Frias, not to be confused with Cardinals World Series hero David Freese.
That's okay. Just glad to be here this time in the studio in person.
You don't mind being called David Freese at this point, do you?
No.
After what he's done for the Cardinals this postseason.
Yeah, it's all good for now.
All right, awesome. Yeah, shouldn't you be in St. Louis? Anyway.
What am I? Oh, I gotta get.
You look good.
Yeah, you look good for what happened after Game 6. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, you got a new shirt, I see, after they ripped it off you. But anyway, we got a lot to talk about, you guys. And let's start. We'll get into baseball later, but let's start with the NFL. We've got two teams in the Bay Area right now who are playing very well. That hasn't happened in a while. And now we got the Raiders, who are only, at the time we're taping this show, they're only half a game out of first in their division. Niners lead their division by 3 games. Football's fun again in the Bay Area. And let's start with the Oakland Raiders. They come to this game. Now, the big news, of course, recently with the Raiders, they lost Al Davis, won a couple games, and all of a sudden, their big quarterback, Jason Campbell, goes down. Broken collarbone, out for the year. So they go and they trade for Carson Palmer, formerly, of course, of the Cincinnati Bengals. And they gave up, let's look at this, guys. They gave up a lot for Carson Palmer. They gave up a first-round pick in next year's draft, second-round pick in 2013, which becomes a first-rounder if the Raiders win a playoff game this year. So the question I want to pose to you guys is, do you think, how risky was this trade, first of all, and was it worth it for the Raiders? Because this is a guy in Palmer, his numbers have gone down the last few years. His best years were like 05, 06. His quarterback rating hasn't been as high ever since. And he basically, you could argue that he quit on the Bengals. So, But before we get into did he quit, how risky, Dave, we'll start with you since this is your first show back. How risky was this a move for the Raiders?
I think it's a big risk. I mean, I can understand the trade, because you have Kyle Bowler as their backup, and the way you saw him playing the first half, you could see why the Raiders needed an upgrade on quarterback. And the coach Hugh Jackson even mentioned he's always had an interest in Carson Palmer, going back to when he was at USC as a coach, and Carson Palmer was a quarterback. So I think this was his chance to seize the opportunity to trade for Carson and see if he could continue the offense, the spark with the Raiders offense that Jason Campbell was doing. And it's very unfortunate for Jason Campbell. It seemed like he was primed to have his career year, but now he's hurt. And realistically, he's not going to be back until like the end of the season. And by then, the Raiders could be out of the playoffs. So I think Hugh Jackson figured, we'll get Carson Palmer in there. He's a veteran quarterback. He's led the Bengals to the playoffs, even though they had a better core of receivers, with Ochocinco. But the Raiders, their wide receiver play has been great. Hayward Bay has really come through. And so I think that, for the most part, I think it's a good risk. It's probably going to take a few weeks for Carson Palmer to get settled. But I think as far as the Raiders' offense, I think they can only get offensively they're going to get better.
Right, I think what you were saying about Jason Campbell is, I think you can pretty much say he may have been Wally pipped out of Oakland. I mean, not to say Carson Palmer is suddenly going to turn into the Lou Gehrig of football, but I'm just saying that he may have gotten pretty much hurt and taken out of Oakland because, like you said, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year, and he's probably not going to come back to Oakland.
Carson Palmer is a better passer than Jason Campbell, so I think if the key is if Palmer gets the deep ball, if you could get understand the offensive formula, the plays and everything, the book, the Raiders could be even more explosive. So I think they're betting on that chance that Palmer could really lift their offense, passing offense.
Absolutely. Well, and Dave, you mentioned that first game, and let's look at the stats real quick here. Kyle Bowler in the first half is 7 out of 14, 61 yards, no TDs, 3 interceptions. Well, then let's put in Carson Palmer. 8 of 21, 116 yards, no TDs, and 3 interceptions. And there was a lot of second guessing, John, of Hugh Jackson after this game. Should he have started Palmer to begin with? Should he have come in earlier? do you think Jackson handled the quarterback situation right going into and in that game?
No, not with the bye week coming up the next week. I probably would have told Carson Palmer that he's not going to play at all during that Kansas City game. I would have gone with Kyle Bowler. I know he had a horrible, horrible first half, but to throw someone in there after, 5 days on the roster?
Right.
It's almost unfair to Palmer. Yeah, you looked bad against Kansas City, but if Palmer doesn't play, you can say we have the bye week or have Carson Palmer back or now, and things are looking up rather than, wow, is Carson Palmer really this bad?
Right. I agree, because to me, you got to have time to learn the offense.
Yeah.
You can't just come, especially Ben, this is a guy, and Carson Palmer, who hadn't played all season. He played all 16 games for the Bengals last year, but he had not played this year. And he switches teams, has basically no time to learn the offense. I like John's point where, you had the bye week, give him a couple times, start Bowler in Kansas City, let it be Bowler, as bad as he was, let Bowler play against Kansas City, and then, Palmer has time to learn the offense. He's in after the bye week.
Yeah, I don't think that Palmer's going to end up being one of the worst quarterbacks this season. I think it's like John says, give him a little more time to learn the offense, and I don't think this is what we're going to see from him. He's been too good, even after the injury, to be the kind of quarterback that's just going to let the Raiders tank.
Yeah. Well, okay, and we talked about, of that game, which, Dave, we were talking about how risky that trade was. Let me ask you guys this. In terms of Carson Palmer as a person, how risky was this trade? Because, we were talking about this before we went on. You could make the argument, and I brought it up in the intro, you could make the argument he quit on the Bengals. He basically was unhappy there. He said, he pretty much said he never wanted to step foot in Paul Brown Stadium again. He wanted a trade, he was done. And if the Bengals didn't trade him, he was retiring. And he did. He basically retired. He did not play and finally the Bengals said, okay, fine, have it your way. And they got a lot for it, but they made the trade and let him go. So
they say the quarterback is a bit of a diva position.
Right, well, like wide receiver too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a high profile
Beyonce
position.
called that she
The
wants
Most
her job
important
back.
position in a way.
Exactly. Well, no, that's the thing. You've got a guy here who basically quit, and we've seen it over the last few years. People come into Oakland, they do not have fun in Oakland. They do not enjoy themselves playing Oakland. Randy Moss is
Until
a
maybe
prime
this
example.
year. Until maybe this year.
Right, well, that's exactly what I was just going to say, because now they're starting to win again.
Yeah.
The atmosphere's kind of changed. So, but how much do you consider Palmer quitting on the Bengals? First of all, do you think he quit? And if he did, how big of a risk is that if he gets unhappy in Oakland?
No, I think he, to say quit, he's a professional athlete, it's a business, I think he just said, I'll wait out the 3 years, I'm still young enough. Yeah. Like I said earlier, he led the Bengals to playoffs the last few years, and then they just got knocked out early. And I think he felt like, he's probably tired of it and he has high expectations. But still, to go to the Raiders, you're right. The Raiders, they haven't even been in the playoffs. So for him to just accept the trade, I guess there was that part of him that wanted to play football again as well, but just not with the Bengals. And then he just compromised, I guess, and said, "Oh, I'll see if I can lead the Raiders to the playoffs."
That's my thing. I kind of feel like, okay, he was sick of Cincinnati, so he quit and came to the Raiders, and that's fine. But the Raiders paid a lot for him. Yeah. They gave up possibly 2 first-round draft picks, a definitely number 1 draft pick, a number 2, which can turn into a number 1. Yeah. That's a huge risk in the National Football League to give up possibly 2 number 1 draft picks. Yeah. So what do the Raiders do if suddenly he's unhappy in Oakland?
I think in terms of Palmer, a lot of players demand trades. It's the unusual thing about that whole situation was the owner was unwilling to trade him.
Right. Right.
So I don't know if it's that uncommon in terms of what you were saying. I was joking with my buddy the other day. The only people that don't like this trade for the Raiders are Todd McShay and Mel Kiper Jr. because they love the draft.
Right.
And they'd rather give up their firstborn than give up a first-round draft pick.
Right.
But I'm not going to – quarterback is the most important position in all of sports. It is.
Right.
So if I'm staring at Kyle Bowler for the rest of the year or I have a chance to get Carson Palmer – I'm going to give up a first-round pick, possibly 2, probably a second-round pick, for that chance to get Carson Palmer. I'll risk, you get the right guard out of Mississippi State. to not get Carson Palmer. You know,
Right.
these draft picks don't always pan out. Actually, they very rarely pan out to be anything. Carson Palmer's proven. I think the Raiders legitimately think that they are the best team in the AFC West. And I think when Campbell went down, they said, "Uh-oh, we're not the best team anymore." And now Carson Palmer gives them a chance to be the best team again.
And that's an excellent point. And that's an excellent point, John, because I was just going to say, I think the Raiders, it would maybe be different. We could have a different argument, different discussion, if the Raiders were, rebuilding.
Yeah.
Or lenient.
They've been rebuilding for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking to win now. They are looking
just
to win right now. They want to make the playoffs this year, not a couple years down the road.
If they make the playoffs this year, they'll gladly trade those draft picks. They'll gladly do it.
Remember, the second draft pick isn't if the second draft pick doesn't become a number one, not
Unless
if
they
they
win
make
a
the
game,
playoffs, if they win a game.
So I mean, if they win a playoff game, it will be worth it. So
Right.
I think it was a good move. Obviously, it wasn't a good start for Palmer, but we'll see. We'll see how they do 2 weeks from now.
Okay, well let's switch gears here real quick and talk about mentioning the Raiders. This season we said they're looking to win now. They're 4-3 as of this moment. Let's look at the rest of their schedule, you guys. What do you think? I mean, they're at San Diego, at Minnesota, which if you look at the records right now, you think, oh, well, the Raiders should take care of that one, but you never know because it's in Minnesota.
Honda's playing pretty good.
Against the Bears, at Miami, at Green Bay, Lions in in Oakland, at Kansas City, and then another game with San Diego in Oakland. I mean, this team, obviously, they have 2 games left with the Chargers. Chargers lead the division, so they definitely have a shot. How do you see this going for the Raiders?
I mean, they have a shot. It's going to be between them and San Diego. I know Kansas City looked pretty good against the Raiders last week, but
And they kind of bounced back. They
lost their running back.
Right.
Castle's kind of hit and miss. Their defense isn't much, even though they shut out the Raiders. But we'll see how San Diego does. It's going to depend. San Diego's playing Kansas City this Monday night. That's going to be a big game.
Yeah.
So we'll see how they look on Monday night. We'll see how the Raiders look 2 weeks from now. They're at San Diego, I believe.
I think they played Denver.
Yeah.
They're at San Diego.
They
So
don't play Denver?
No, they just played Denver. I guess they're done with Denver. Yeah.
No, they played Denver at home, I believe.
Denver at
2
home.
weeks.
Okay. Well, either way, we'll see how Carson Palmer looks in the next game, and that should go. McFadden's hurt too. I mean,
Right.
that's a pretty big deal. He's on crutches supposedly. Luckily, they're not playing this Sunday.
Well,
but-
okay, Ben, let me just throw this in before I ask for your prediction real quick on the Raiders. They're 29th in the league in defense right now. See that jumping with this schedule? You see that jumping up and biting them?
Yeah, I mean, like the Niners, they're not in the strongest division, but I do think the Chargers are the best team. And if they can handle a couple Chargers losses, is it 1 left against the Chargers? 2. I mean, I still think they can get in if they lose both those games.
Those are going to be big games. Those are going to be big games.
Dave?
And I think that San Diego, they're not as dominant as they were even a few years ago. And the Raiders, like I said, if the offense gets going and the defense has to improve as well, because the defense looks, they have a good pass rush, but the cornerback play, they lost Asamoah to the Eagles. I think that in the end that's going to probably hurt them.
Yeah.
I think they'll have a better chance of being the Chargers, but still, I would still feel that the Chargers are the favorites to take the AFC West.
Chargers lost Sproles too, and you've seen by watching him on the Saints how important of a part he is. So they've lost some players. The Raiders getting a little more mature. They have some young Jacoby Ford, good young receiver. Yeah. So we'll see how he meshes with Palmer.
I still think they can get in with the wild card too. Most of those games, I think there weren't many of those where I say, oh, the Raiders can't win that. I'd say that they've got a good shot to win a lot of those. And
the Raiders could beat anybody on any week. I mean,
9-7 might be enough.
They went to Buffalo, played them tough. Should have won that game probably. Played, beat the Jets at home, who just beat San Diego.
Right.
You don't know. NFL's like that.
I mean, that's the great thing about sports. You never know. I mean, on paper, it can say, oh, well,
Jacksonville just beat Baltimore for some unknown reason.
That's why you play the game. That's why you play the game.
And then if they get in,
we get to talk about it.
Yeah.
Then if they get in, they'll be the silver and black sheep of the AFC.
How long have you been waiting to throw that one out there?
That was about 45 seconds.
All right. Hey, we got another great story going on in football in the Bay Area, and that's the San Francisco 49ers, who are finally, and that's understandable after 10 years, finally getting some national attention after the way they beat the Lions. going off to a 5-1 start, and I mean, where do you start with this team? I think you got to start with Jim Harbaugh. And what he's done, Ben, you and I and Alex were talking last time about the impact Harbaugh will have on this team, and he's definitely had it. I mean, but it's the rest of the coaching staff too. They bring in. Let's talk about the defense real quick, which I think is huge for the 49ers.
Defense.
As of right now, defensive coordinator Vic Fangio has them 7th. They were ranked 7th in overall defense. This is after 10 years of basically being in the middle of the pack.
I put him top 5.
Yeah, middle of the pack in the league, except for 2005, 2006, where they were at the bottom of the league in defense. But now they jump up to number 7. Yep. What's going on now? Now, this is a team where the last few years we've been like, okay, the defense is okay, but it's really the offense that's the problem.
No.
But the defense is really making some noise, and a lot more noise than the offense this year.
I think even
defense, man.
I think even last year they were breaking into the top 10 of a defense. You're talking about a team that finally took care of
Last year they were 13th overall.
Well, okay, so they were right there.
I'm just making the
Yeah.
You're right.
I'm 13.
Right on target.
They took care of some real serious secondary problems. There's not a Niner fan in the world who said that they didn't turn off the TV after an embarrassing touchdown.
Carlos Rogers, Whitner, helping out.
Yeah, so they definitely,
Culliver.
Whitner was a big addition, Rogers as well, and I think you're seeing Willis be at the helm of this team. Spikes has been huge for, I forgot what team he went to, but I saw he's leading his team in tackles now.
Yeah. Navarro Bowman, though, just had,
been
17
fantastic,
tackles the other game, so
Yeah.
he's stepping into Spikes' spot.
great.
I think
good.
Alden Smith had maybe 0 tackles each of his first 2 games, but then
Yeah.
I saw the other day he was one of the top performers. And then Justin Smith on the line, it's kind of all coming together.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the defensive stats. You look at the defensive rankings real quick. The Niners have 2 players in the top 38 in tackles. You mentioned Navarro Bowman is tied for 11 with 56. Patrick Willis has 47. 3 players in the top 28. Alden Smith in sacks. Alden Smith with 5.5.
Already,
Alden
5
has
and a half.
5.5. 5.5
6
sacks.
games?
Yeah.
5
That's
right?
insane. I mean, you might be talking about a guy who could not only win Rookie of the Year, but already be stepping into the shoes of the elite defensive lineman after 1 year.
Yeah, I mean,
Can you imagine how good this defense is?
Well, he's on pace. Smith is on pace to tie the NFL rookie record set by Javon Kersey back in 1999.
Well,
with
and like I
Tennessee.
said, I think he got shut down the first 2 games.
And he's also on pace to have the most sacks by 49ers since Dolman had 15 in 98. Chris Dolman had 15 in 1998.
Well,
And
we
he's
don't
still-
want to count all our chickens before they hatch.
Of course not,
But
right.
insert chicken joke here. I'm blanking.
I was gonna-
Sorry, go ahead.
You know what you're saying.
Your point?
He could be a perennial Pro Bowler, So
He might.
people were trashing that pick,
He's
too,
still
when they
going through
drafted him.
some.
Oh, yeah.
So,
He's still going through the rookie curve. He's still trying to figure himself. His role, and yet he's still having these sacks. When he gets comfortable, as far as Niners defense is concerned, as long as he rushes the quarterback and gets to him,
Yeah.
it's going to be okay. Even if he makes any rookie mistakes, because Niners defense, they have enough depth now with linebacker play, Bowman, Willis, cornerback play, which for the last 5-6 years I've been just wondering when are we going to get some actually decent
better.
cornerbacks, and we
Oh,
finally
yeah.
have one
Yeah.
with Carlos Rogers, Dante Whitner,
Chris
and
Culliver.
Sean Golston doing okay, and so. I think the defense, they look like they know their roles. There's no confusion. Singletary last year, it seemed like it was just a lot of pressure, and the defense ranks 13 still. I think they just feel more relaxed. And
That's what I was going to say.
You know.
If anything, this coaching staff has been able to utilize the talent.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't necessarily Alden Smith, Navarro Bowman starting now, but the main talent's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So you look at what's the big difference. Why is this defense so much better? Well, they have the right guys in the right
and
places.
they stopped the rush game.
Well,
And
I think a
stopping
big,
the rush game.
I think a big part of this team
For the opponent.
is the draft class of 2011. I
Was
mean,
a great-
so far, last year's draft, these players are coming up huge
So
in
far,
the first
A.
few games of the season. I mean, you got Alden Smith, you got, we mentioned Chris Culliver at cornerback, Kendall Hunter, who I think has been
Great backup.
vital. Just because he gives Frank Gore rest. I mean, here's another running back who can get the job done, take some care, so Gore doesn't have to get the ball every time. I mentioned it last show, Ben. It was always, the last few years, hand the ball to Gore, hand the ball to Gore. Fourth and
Obviously, I like the guy.
Swing past the Gore.
Right.
Screen past the Gore.
Too much of that.
If anything, I think we're not seeing quite enough Frank
Gore's
Gore.
awesome, but, I mean, you got to give the guy a rest. And I think Kendall Hunter's been huge in that. And then Bruce Miller, the fullback, or we were talking about this before the show, who took over from Moore and Norris. Miller is a converted defensive end. He never played fullback at any level. And all of a sudden, he's a starting fullback in the NFL.
Anybody remember Mike Singletary rushing the ball up the middle?
If you ever watched Harbaugh at Stanford, though, he did that. He had guys that were playing offense and defense, so it's not totally unheard of him for him to do that.
I'm sorry, I meant Refrigerator Perry rushing the ball.
Oh, wow. Yeah, wow.
Mike Singletary.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Out of these players, or which player out of the rookie class or anybody has so far impressed you the most this year?
Well, it's got to be
Has made the biggest impact.
It's got to, like Ben was saying, it's got to be Aldon Smith. The Niners had nobody that could put pressure on the quarterback for 3-4 years. So to have him with almost 6 sacks in his first 6 games, that's huge. And you've seen the pressure. He got to Stafford, I think, twice. You saw the pressure he was under. So having that Clay Matthews in Green Bay, for instance, just having the ability to have a guy who can get to the quarterback, it makes Charles Woodson in Green Bay that much better. When Aldon Smith gets to the quarterback, it makes Carlos Rogers
helping everyone
that much better. It makes Dante Whitner that much. It makes the secondary that much better. So.
And then you have Justin Smith on the other side of the line.
Yeah.
So you have 2 rushers now. I mean,
Yeah,
it just makes a
exactly.
huge difference. And then the opposing team has to decide: do you want to double team which one, or it just creates a little bit of havoc.
Yeah.
And that's what the Niners have.
Justin Smith's probably loving it. There's not 3 guys
let's-
blocking him anymore.
Right. I mean, let's switch gears really quick here and go over to the offense because as great as the defense has been, football obviously has 3 main parts: special teams, offense, and defense.
Yeah.
And the offense, as fun as this team is to watch, this offense is still ranked 29th overall. And then near the bottom, and that's overall, which is yards. But, they're 31st in passing, 11th, of course, in rushing. That's been their strength for years. 11th in rushing, 30th in receiving. But they're scoring a lot of points, Ben. They're 9th in points scored. What are the Niners doing right this year to get to? They're still near the bottom of the league in offense, but they're scoring points.
Well, I'm not totally sure, but I have to think that Frank Gore is an excellent threat within the 20.
The Frank Gore shirt, ladies and gentlemen.
That's making an appearance.
And, I think
like
you're
it.
seeing the emergence of Crabtree and Vernon Davis.
Crabtree
maybe
looked great last
Delaney
week.
Walker. And I think Alex Smith, for the first time in a long time, feels like, I don't know, it's a team that can compete against anyone. And that maybe he's got a little job security for the first time in a while. And I think all these things are helping.
Yeah, I mean, the last time they weren't in the bottom, the 29th, the last year that the Niners weren't in the bottom 10 in the offensive rankings was way back in 2003 when they were 5th in offense.
Jeff Garcia, Terrell Owens.
Was that Mariucci?
Yeah, so they have a long way to go on their offense, but they're making sure. Dave, what do you see that they're doing differently on offense this year that's been helping them?
Well, I think the key thing as far as the offense is concerned and the biggest influence on Coach Harbaugh is pretty much tell Alex Smith, just run the play, simplify things, don't overthink, just do what you have to do, and let the running game take over. Let me make the right decisions. And guess what? Alex Smith has bought into it.
Yeah.
He hasn't cost the Niners losses, and that to me was probably the biggest reason why I didn't want Alex Smith back with the 49ers. He just kept losing games for the Niners. He just started turning the ball over, getting sacked.
See?
And so I think Harbaugh's kind of calmed them down and made them realize, hey, you're not a rookie. You're a veteran. Just play as a veteran. You don't have to be the superstar that you were brought in because you were the number 1 draft pick.
Yeah.
And I think for the first time he's actually getting it. And I think for this year alone, I think that's okay. I'm not, I'm not expecting a lot of Alex Smith still. But I think Harbaugh. I have trust more in Harbaugh in telling Alex Smith, run these plays and it'll lead itself, to victory.
Well, and that's a great point. This is a point where you love being wrong, because I thought, you mentioned not wanting Alex Smith back. I don't think any Niner fans wanted Alex Smith back.
No.
And I thought, to be honest, coming into this season with the lockout, we hired the new coach, but he couldn't meet with the players. They couldn't do anything with the coaching staff. Alex, because of the lockout, and the Niners didn't have time to go out and get another quarterback because of the lockout. So we were basically stuck with Alex Smith. Hey, so far it's still working, and I think to that end, a big point was even when the lockout was still happening, Alex Smith stepped up and was the leader of this team and said, "Okay, we have a lockout, but I'm getting these guys together, and we're going to practice."
Exactly.
And we're gonna do what we need to do to get ready for when this season starts.
Well, this is, if you think about it, Alex Smith has had Mike Nolan, Mike Singletary, and now Jim Harbaugh. It's really the
Not
first.
to mention 7 different offensive coordinators.
Exactly. It's really the first time where he's had a head coach that is quarterback centered.
Exactly.
And not named Mike.
Nolan, exactly.
And not named Mike. Thank you, Ben.
Exactly.
No
I mean,
offense to
Nolan
Mike.
is a defensive guy. He's not a defensive coordinator for Miami, which is going real well. And Singletary.
They won again.
Singletary almost hated quarterbacks. So to have a coach come in there and really say, you're going to be my guy, I'm going to build the offense around you, we're going to put you in situations where you can succeed.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
really a new, rather than just saying don't mess up, it's saying you're going to succeed.
Right.
I think that's the biggest
positive
difference.
attitude,
Yeah.
positive outlook.
Rather than Singletary just saying don't mess up, manage the game. Harbaugh's Alex Smith
I'll
is
kick you off the bench and you
yeah.
have to go in the
I mean,
clubhouse like you did with Vernon Davis.
The 4th down against Detroit, that was a big throw.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know he didn't have a whole lot of yards in that game. He hasn't had a whole lot of yards in any game. But he's making the big throws, the 3rd down throws, that 1 4th down throw. So he's really been put in a good situation for him, I think. So.
Absolutely. Well, okay, real quick, we only have a few minutes left. Let's look at the upcoming schedule for the Niners, guys. How do you see this playing out? They got Cleveland at home, at Washington, then they're home for 2 straight weeks, the Giants and the Cardinals, at the Ravens, home against the Rams, in Arizona, Monday Night Football against the Steelers, and then Seattle and St. Louis on the road to end the season.
You know, I think their biggest enemy really is themselves. You know, you see it in sports all the time. A team performs way past what everyone expects, and then all of a sudden they kind of hit a wall.
Right.
I think if they can keep their composure, they have the talent there to at least finish 8-8, 9-7. You know,
I mean, they're 5-1 right now. They really.
Hey, wow, you're looking at a big losing streak there.
They'd
man.
have to really fall apart to be 8-8.
It's a weak division, so they shouldn't.
Right.
They didn't even play a game last week, and they gained a half game against the entire division. Everybody
Well, they
lost.
can still go
so.
8-8. That is going to
And I think they'll win the NFC West. They're going to win at least 9
yeah.
and 10 games, and that should be enough. They'll at least beat the Seahawks and Rams once, Arizona, and then they'll win probably maybe against the Giants and the Cleveland Browns. So I'm really thinking they're going to at least get 10 wins, and they'll clinch the NFC West by the end of the year.
Oh, yeah, I think at this point, barring a massive collapse, they're going to win the West. But you never know, and that's why we'll get to talk about it. We'll take it. We'll get to talk about it a lot more next time. We'll be back to the Sports Junkies. Thomas, Dave, Ben, and John. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.